Is it ever okay to steal food? A court in Italy has ruled that stealing small amounts of food in order to survive is not against the law, as the right to life overrides any other concern. A Ukrainian man living on the street in Italy was charged with theft after stealing around £3 worth of food from a supermarket. But Italy's highest court threw out the charges, a move that was broadly welcomed in Italy. I speak to writer and free speech campaigner Ella Whelan and the author and commentator Owen Jones. Hello to you both. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. I'd like you to both make your cases to start with, please. Ladies first.
Well, I think that it's right that nobody should ever be put in jail for stealing a loaf of bread or whatever it is, kind of food, if they are going hungry. I think we have more compassion than that, and also the law that shouldn't be rolled out that far. We shouldn't be doing that. But on the other hand, it is not solving any problems, and it is no solution to say that legalising stealing helps poor people in the long run. It does nothing, because that person then has to go on and steal the next day and the next day. This is not, we shouldn't have to be asking this question. We should be talking about how we alleviate poverty. Would that be through making more jobs, building more houses so there aren't homeless people in the first place? This is just kind of a very short-term solution that serves to make people feel better rather than changing their situation.
Owen Jones?
Well, I don't think anyone's suggesting that petty theft is a solution to poverty. I think the point about the court case and the reason it was so widely welcomed in Italy is it made a statement. What do we value more in society? 2 pieces of cheese and what was it? A bit of chicken or something, which is what he stole.
A sausage, I think, actually.
A sausage, literally a sausage. 2 pieces of cheese and a sausage, or human beings. What's more criminal? Is it petty theft of a sausage and 2 pieces of cheese, or is it that in some of the richest countries that have ever existed on the face of the earth, where people are literally going hungry? And I think, for me, instinctively, in a dispute between property and people, obviously I'll go for people. And, if we think about this throughout history, take this to the extreme kind of logic of the 19th century, where people literally were starving to death in places like India and Ireland, and what you got was grain was exported from those places on the basis that the rules of the market were more important than human beings. Now, I'd hope we'd move away from that sort of logic, and I think this court ruling, what it does is it addresses the fact that in rich countries people are hungry, they have empty bellies, which is not justifiable, and in the future people look back and think, what's more criminal, petty theft of a sausage and 2 pieces of cheese, or the fact in very rich countries people are hungry? Right? It's as simple as that. It draws attention to a very important issue.
It most certainly does, Ella. But what about, I suppose, local businesses that might be listening to us this afternoon and will say, we cannot afford for people to come and nick stuff from our chilled counter, because if everybody started doing it, we'd go out of business and we'd find ourselves in the same position.
So I think that probably links to what I'm talking about, in that this isn't a solution. And though I'm not so interested in small business owners griping over the loss of a lump of cheese, I am very concerned about the fact that what this makes out that we think poor people are valued as in society. And I think what Owen Jones is talking about is seeing them as a kind of victims of society that we have to feel sorry for and help. And though I absolutely agree that we shouldn't be penalising or jailing people for such ridiculous petty theft, this does not make their lives any better. This is no solution. And in fact, actually, there is a strong point here to be made that everybody must be equal under the law. To say that some people are not as beholden to the law as others is detrimental to them, because it says that what we're saying, just because you don't have enough money, that you suddenly turn into a petty criminal. I think that's something most working class people would completely reject.
Just on that, it's not about feeling sorry for people. It's just saying that in extremely rich countries, in which wealth is booming like never before for a very small group of people, it's just not justifiable to have people going hungry. It's irrational, it's unsustainable. And the whole point of this is, look, we're now having a discussion on Sky News about the issue of hunger. In this country, hundreds of thousands of people every year are forced to food banks, charities, in order to satisfy the most basic human need of all, other than breathing and drinking water, to eat. Now, I think that is criminal. I think it's I think it's immoral, but I think it's criminal. And what this court case does is it just says that we should treat human beings more importantly than property, that their worth is more important. No one's saying it's a solution. I don't think I'm going to suggest let's just have petty theft as a way of dealing with poverty. It's saying that the right to life is universal, the right to a decent, comfortable life is universal. Everybody should have those things. Some are denied those rights at the moment, and we should, as you say, have a real living wage, a house building programme, and all the other things that you talked about. But this is drawing attention to an issue, and it just says humans are more important than property. That is all it says.
You're muttering under your breath there, Ella.
No, I think that what I'm interested in is taking things further. So I am not into this whole idea that people should have the very minimum. People should have the basic right to life. I think most working class people would join me in saying we want more than that.
Well,
we want to have as much as everybody else and more. And so this focusing on the kind of very positive thing that we are kind of treating poverty seriously, which I think most people do anyway. It's not like we have a kind of country or population of callous people. It's saying that where does the solution to this lie? And it doesn't lie in creating more kind of complicated bureaucracy and saying that the law does and doesn't apply to one person and not the other. It's saying we want more for everybody else, and I don't think that the solution is that it should be legal for someone to have to go and rob day after day. Who wants to do that? It's so degrading.
And nobody's suggesting that should be the solution. I mean, I don't know why we keep having that discussion. We should abolish poverty, of course we should. And the point you're making about,
how do you abolish poverty without doing more for people and kind of, building houses? You can't just, this is the whole problem,
But I agree,
I think
Ella,
I think the middle class left are really into this idea of being like, let's abolish poverty and let's treat people really nicely and let's feel bad for people, but they never back it up with a serious argument for economic growth, more jobs and more houses and lifting people out of poverty permanently,
Ella, can I just
not
respond?
just for that one day.
Well, I'll just respond. I mean, I don't know how middle class you are, so I won't get bogged down in that discussion. I know you used to be on the left until about a year ago, but your views have evolved. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of the specifics,
we're left of the left at Spite.
Well, I know you think you're
Unlike
kind of
some
No. We're doing fine. Stick to the point.
Well, just so we know, Spikes used to be Trotskyists, and they've evolved into kind of bizarre libertarians. But in terms of the specifics of what you're saying there, I want a mass house building programme. I've been talking about that for years. We have a huge housing shortage in this country and other countries.
On the Greenbelt, though,
a lack of affordable housing. We're going on to all sorts of weird tangents. I mean, the problem with your argument, with all due respect, Al, is I don't know who you're arguing with, because my view is, and you say, you just want them to give them the bare minimum. No, I don't. The old phrase was, and you know this phrase, I think, is give them bread and roses. That people should have not just a basic subsistence, they should also have a comfortable, enriching, exciting life. But at the moment, the point is this: in Italy and in Britain, people are so far from that they're literally being driven to steal from shops. Now, we shouldn't have stealing, of course we shouldn't, but the issue is the far more criminal fact of our societies is that people are driven to do that in the first place. Let's abolish the need for people to desperately get food because they're hungry by abolishing hunger, and then we'll have a conversation about how we get an even more comfortable life for people. But this kind of contrarianism for its own sake, I don't really understand. It's just a court case saying people are more important than property, drawing attention to hunger and saying as a society we should do more to make sure everyone has a comfortable life. And let's build housing and give people a real wage and good secure jobs. Absolutely.
Yes.
So there's no disagreement.
Oh,
I agree with that.
I think she might agree on one small point, I think, is what I'm picking up from this conversation. Ella, your turn.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, I'm addressing here a culture on the contemporary left at the moment, of which I do not agree with, which treats not just people who are literally starving, but working class people as well as victims of their situation, as incapable of moving out of it themselves, as needing a leg up. And I really reject this because it is not treating people equally. I've just said it's the kind of the
but you're just setting up an argument
that are made. Hang on, I haven't finished my point. I haven't finished my point. What I'm arguing, we're not disagreeing on the fact that this is a positive thing. That I think there's absolutely, you couldn't say there's anything wrong with saying that, poor man who's having to nick a bit of bread and cheese or whatever it was should be jailed. I mean, I think it was like €100 fine and 6 months in jail. That's diabolical, and that absolutely shouldn't happen. And I think that's great that it isn't happening. But it's where do we go from here? So I suppose I'm kind of gesturing to the bigger argument, which I think the left really fails to address at the moment. And, say what you like about spikes, but I continuously make the argument for more. We want more for people, more, and even more than middle class people have at the moment. It's about saying the sky's the limit, and not kind of getting very hung up on this whole idea of like we have to alleviate people so that they aren't starving. They're just like living a slightly better.
But I mean, this is the point again. Can I just address that point? Again, no one's arguing that. I want everyone to have a very decent.
People argue that in mainstream publications every day.
Ella, can I argue against another really important point? Because you say this idea of poor people being treated as victims. Now, that's not how I see it. What I want people to do is to organise collectively. I don't want a kind of bunch of do-gooders from on high to just issue a bunch of policies.
What usually happens with charity.
Ella, let him finish.
Sorry, go on.
What's really inspired me, you talk about housing, take in London, we've had, for example, working class young women at the very forefront in places in East London, like the Focus E15 estate, where they've collectively organised for decent, affordable, comfortable housing. I think change doesn't happen by the goodwill of the powerful. I think it happens by people organising from below. So far from seeing people as victims, I see people as masters of their own destiny if they organise. But none of these are arguments. I mean, you haven't come up with a single argument that, in any sense, it relates to the point, I think, or certainly any argument that I would ever make, because obviously no one argues here that everyone should have a very good, comfortable existence, the best existence they can have, and we should aspire for the very best. The argument is we live in rich societies where people can't afford to feed themselves, and we should do something about it. That's it.
Yeah, and short of a complete overhaul of the way the society's run at the moment, which I would be, gunning for, we have to face with what we have to, tomorrow. What I'm saying is that tomorrow, if stealing was legalised for whatever level, that person's life would not change. So I'm saying it's not going far enough. And you're right, short of a complete overhaul of how capitalist society is run at the moment, nothing is going to be good enough in terms of this piecemeal argument. So,
fair enough.
But I think that you're being slightly disingenuous in saying that the left is not treating working class and people in the poverty line as victims. That's the case.
We're almost out of time, but slightly disingenuous. That's like being a bit pregnant, I think. Final word to you, Owen.
Let's build a society where nobody is hungry. Let's make sure people organise to change their own lives, and let's have policies that abolish poverty and give everyone a comfortable existence. This court case just draws attention to a serious issue. Humans are more important than property. That's it, the end.
Lots to chew over there. Thanks very much indeed to both of you for joining us here on Sky News this afternoon and taking part in our discussion. We appreciate it. A lively one, that. Thanks a lot.